Okay, so here we have Frank Sinatra versus Freddie Mercury, epic rap battles of history. I'm excited about this one. I've been currently really interested in learning about organized crime and the mafia. And if you know anything about Frank Sinatra, he's kind of tied up in that world so very much. Three books that I have next to me right now are all mob autobiographies. I've got three mob related books in my Audible queue right now. I'm just interested in the mob right now. And that's what brought me to Frank Sinatra, because somehow he keeps coming up in everything. He keeps being brought up, and I think that's incredibly interesting how he danced between this very popular public life and kind of hung out in these kind of gritty underground circles at the same time. So I think this should be a lot of fun. Hey, John Doe, it's cool to have you here. Glad to have you here for your first stream. Yeah, so everybody who's here, let me know if you have anything fun for as far as facts for this one, especially about Freddie Mercury, who I don't know as much about. I just know he's the lead singer of Queen, or was. And he got AIDS, which he was one of the early, or like, real public figures that really brought that to the public eye in a time where people kind of ignored it for such a long time. So that's an interesting one. So let's get her started. Oh, dude. So it's like kind of like a middle-aged Sinatra. And the Freddie Mercury is solid. That's a great... Like, this is a point where they clearly have gotten a little bit of money behind them. It's not like the season one stuff where they were clearly working with pretty little. So they have a little bit of money behind them, but like they aren't doing like the full-on makeup stuff like they do now to the same extent. But this one's pretty solid. The only thing that might throw you off is that the mustache is clearly fake, but other than that, like, he looks pretty good.
What's wrong with your face, baby? Yikes! With those teeth, would you throw them in no dust left to bite? Christ, no, kid. This is show business. Show some class when you dress. Shave that bush off your lips. Whoa.
So that's a great start. The no dust left to bite thing. Another one bites the dust. He's just kind of doing a play on a very popular Queen song. The classy dressing thing, I guess that speaks to like the different worlds that these two ran in. Rock music it took a while for it to be considered like respectable, and while Frank Sinatra, he's shaking hands with presidents. He has to kind of like be that guy who can fit in with the upper class, because that's like how he thrives. So I get that angle. That's a cool angle.
Queen, huh? Ain't that sweet? You dance like you rode a bicycle race with no seat. That's what's wrong with you people. You'll do anything to get famous. You changed your name to Mercury. You should have been Freddie Uranus.
So those are all gay jokes there. I think even the bicycle with no seat thing, like, I think that's clearly got some implications there that Freddie Mercury's participating in some sodomy here and there. So Freddie Mercury, I believe he was bisexual. I don't know if he was gay or bisexual, but I believe I heard that he was like actually more like bisexual than gay. Like, I don't know. Either way, he kept it kind of under wraps. Like, there's a certain like people ended up figuring it out, but like for so much of his fame, who knows how it would have impacted his fame at the time. Like, if he was out and open now, we wouldn't really be fazed by it, because there's a lot of open musicians. However, at a time, I don't know how it would work. Yeah, he was bi. Okay, that's what I thought. For the longest time, I thought he was just gay, but he's actually bi.
like I haven't heard those things before. You're just a bully who's too scared to go to war. Get a hit song called My Way, but someone else wrote it. You're the least talented rat in your whole pack of bros. You got more notes.
Oh, that's a good one. The Rat Pack is Frank Sinatra's group. There's some interesting things here. Haven't heard these things before.
You're just a bully who's too scared to go to war.
He's too scared to go to war. That's not really fair there. So first of all, let's talk about why Frank Sinatra never went to war. One thing is that he was kind of light. He wasn't like heavy enough, and he wasn't really tall enough. That's not in itself disqualifying. You can still be short and not super heavy and be drafted, but he never really was drafted. He actually tried to volunteer. He tried to go to war, and they told him he can't because he had some hearing problems, kind of like that caused like a sort of vertigo thing that gave him like a certain like dizziness, and that would have been kind of a detriment to him and the people around him if he was in a war zone. So Frank Sinatra, I believe he actually wanted to go to war. So this angle, calling him scared, it would probably hurt Sinatra because he's like, oh, I was trying to do it. They just told me I couldn't. So that would probably hurt him, but it's not necessarily accurate. And yeah, he was like a singer. He didn't really write his own songs. He just kind of like performing.
A hit song called My Way, but someone else wrote it. You're the least talented rat in your whole pack of bros. You got more notes in your whole range. You can't act and you can dance. I'm more powerful than you when I'm wearing women's pants. Why do you stand there in a suit? It's like you're trying to bowl. When I rock the UK, South America gets horny. Because my
So, like, yeah, his colors were always very dull. Like when you look at Sinatra, he's always just a very he's always a very like simply classy dressed person. During his time, even wearing things like colorful ties would be considered too flamboyant. There was a time when wearing a red tie was like a signal that gay men would use to signal to other gay men that they are gay, which that's kind of absurd to think now because you see how commonplace things like just a plain red tie is. That doesn't mean you're gay, it means you're a Republican. But I find that incredibly interesting that he comes from a time that is like the masculine man is like so dulled down with his colors.
My songs have balls. They're the anthems of victory. Your music is like the soundtrack to a century. You're in the pocket of the mafia and everybody knows. Guinea Dago. Guinea Dago.
Easy, just.
I don't really get the Guinea Dago thing as much. I don't know. Maybe that's something that you guys are familiar with. I know that he is associated with many mob figures. One of the biggest things is that the mob participated in trying to get JFK elected. John F. Kennedy, when he was running for president, it was a closer election than he probably would have liked, but like he may not have won if it wasn't for his partnership with Frank Sinatra, who was a friend of his, and Frank Sinatra getting his friends who were in the mafia to basically help campaign and leverage in favor of John F. Kennedy. Isn't that insane? Like, JFK wasn't like directly dealing with the mob. He goes to Frank Sinatra, who knows some guys, and they were able to sway enough votes, which, what is the mob? The mafia. It's just like organized crime. And he was really close to like organized crime in Chicago and all that. Yeah. Guinea Dago is an old anti-Italian slur. I didn't know that one. There we go.
is a life. I can't stand the racist. I love the colors and the quiz. Just ask Sammy Davis. Look, we all want to swing.
Okay, there we go. Sammy Davis. That's yeah, that's a fair line. It's uncomfortable because he uses terms that are kind of antiquated. Like, queer is back. The LGBTQ movement has basically reclaimed the term queer. It doesn't have the same negative connotation with everybody that it had for a while. Now it's something that people self-identify as. But like in between, there's like this period that people weren't cool with it. But then there's this one period like way back where that was like the main term. They didn't use the term gay yet. They used the term queer. People would be queer or they'd be normal. That's just how they broke it up. So him using that terminology is more a product of his time. But when he says it here, it makes him seem kind of out of touch. It kind of makes him seem sort of bumbling to a modern audience. Same thing with like the term colored. It's not necessarily politically correct today, but it would have been in character for him to say that. And he was relatively pro black, I guess. That feels like a terrible way of phrasing it. I apologize, but yeah, he was he wasn't like wicked racist from what I know about him, and unless I'm missing something.
Baby, but you took it too far. You played butthole roulette, and you lost the draw.
I took one for both teams.
Played butthole roulette, so he ended up getting HIV, he ended up getting AIDS, and then, you know, when you get AIDS, you're immunocompromised, so then you end up getting sick and you die. And getting HIV is not as big of a deal now. There's plenty of wonderful treatments where people can live a relatively normal life, but at his time, it was a death sentence. The federal government in the United States wasn't even really acknowledging the HIV/AIDS crisis. Ronald Reagan, that's one of his big blunders, just completely messing up the AIDS crisis by kind of ignoring it. He ended up putting together I guess, sort of a task force, not a task force, but like a committee to take on the HIV/AIDS crisis. Like, I think it was in his last year or maybe a little before his last year. But so much damage had been done and they didn't really get a whole lot done, even through George Herbert Walker Bush, his administration. They still didn't really do a whole lot on HIV/AIDS. It took a while for any progress to be made on that issue. So Freddie's just one of many victims of that sort of incompetency. Wasn't JFK's father or grandfather part or had connections with the mob? I'm not sure how far back it goes. The Kennedy family certainly did have some sort of mob connections, but in this case, with JFK, he more dealt through the intermediary of Frank Sinatra, since he was so much more directly connected at that time than JFK would have been. And it's really uncomfortable because Robert Kennedy and JFK are both kind of trying to crack down on organized crime as they're taking advantage of it. That's one of the really weird things about the first Kennedy administration. Well, the Kennedy administration, yeah. There was like Robert Kennedy was going after the mob real bad before then, and they thought like if they helped JFK get elected, he'd be out of their hair. But that didn't end up happening. And there's still rumor to this day, which I entertain, that Kennedy's assassination was a mob hit. We don't really know for sure. Some believe it was just a crazy guy. Some believe it was a mob hit. Some believe it was some federal agency like CIA or FBI or whatever. Because they were doing some sketchy stuff at the time. So there's so many options for what it could have been. I'm not entirely sure what I believe. Like, I entertain the mob hit theory.
From a disease no one knew existed.
Let me go back a little.
Look, we all want to swing, baby, but you took it too far. You played butthole roulette, and you lost the draw.
I took one for both teams from a disease no one knew existed. I didn't leave a mark on history, I French kissed it. I'm a champion of the world, extinguished in its pride. So kiss my ass, French, but you'll have to wait in line.
Okay, that was cute. He had that one hit right at the end, but mostly that second verse was like building himself up. It was kind of a response to what Sinatra said, like Sinatra's gay jokes, which, you know, that is what it is. It's not necessarily the most politically correct thing, but I do think Sinatra might have run away with that one. I think like the way Sinatra rapped was just more aggressive towards attacking Freddie, and that's kind of like the style that I liked the most. Though I think performatively I really enjoyed the Freddie Mercury thing. I thought that was really cool. From what I hear, Kennedy's family made its fortune bootlegging booze. Yeah, that I'm not surprised there. I don't know about the early Kennedy family all that much. That's a rabbit hole I'm starting to get a little bit more into, and now that I'm learning more about the mob, I think I want to learn a little bit more about the Kennedy administration, because it's something I've kind of avoided for the longest time, but it is kind of like the precursor to a period in history that I'm really interested in, which is the Johnson administration and the Nixon administration. So it's good to understand Kennedy if you want to understand that other stuff. So it's something I like to pursue a little bit further. This was a really good one, especially considering when it came out. This could come out today and it would still be a banger. Like, the newer ones tend to hit harder. The wordplay is just so deep, but this one's really, I don't know if it's necessarily on their current level, but it's close. It's pretty close.